So I might just, on behalf of NextTech, introduce myself. We have a number of members on team. So I'm Cassandra Parton. I'm the CEO of NextTech Learning. So it's an absolute pleasure to have you join us today for our first SAP webinar. We've got a number of my staff on team as well that are here to listen in and meet you all. So they're very excited. NextTech Learning is an established training business with over 15 years of experience delivering corporate training to support our clients in information technology, office applications, professional development, graphic design, process management, and many more. SAP is a global leader in developing enterprise software to managing business operations, and customer relations is one of our most recent partners as well. So if you have any questions throughout today's session, please use the chat and we'll get them going through. We'll do a little Q&A at the end of each presentation. So please put your notes in the chat, any comments. We want to see if you all engage, and if you have any questions coming through, we're here to support and help you. We want to make sure you get something out of today. So the first part of today's webinar is facilitated by Hendrik Lourens, the owner of Stratflow. So Hendrik is trained as a physicist and subsequently worked for tier 1 organizations, as well as having a direct role in mid-sized manufacturers. So thank you all for joining us, and I hope you all enjoyed today's webinar. Firstly, over to you, Hendrik.
Thank you very much, Cassandra. Let me share my screen. Full screen. Okay. And then just get this here. Thank you very much, Cassandra, for that introduction. So just a slight apology at the beginning. I'm going to take about 35 minutes. When I started putting the slides together, I couldn't stop. And sometimes you should, and other times I believe that this time it is better to add in a little bit more. I'm going to come from a different angle. I'm going to primarily try and show the angle from the point of view of management and management thinking as a way of getting supply chains to be agile. And then I'll leave it to my learned colleagues from SAP to actually explain how their system makes this possible. So just to quickly start off, so we know, and I think we remember around May 2020 last year, 75% of companies in the supply chains in the US were reporting shortages. And that was largely as a result of the COVID impact. It was a wake-up call, I think, for the world that we've just driven just-in-time systems to their maximum efficiency based on the belief we had in a stable and predictable environment. And even those that thought that they had contingency plans with more than one supplier found to their shock that often these suppliers depended on the same components from the same firm. And the international shipping was disrupted, causing issues. And many companies that to that period had benefited from low-cost environments and having most of their production there suddenly found themselves, as Buffett said, naked with the tide going out. So over the last 20 years of globalization, we've successfully operated and we've managed our risk based on a normal distribution view on variation. But of course, in the real world, we have outlier events that show up, and Nassim Taleb calls them the fat tails. So they're low probability, high impact events. COVID was one such an event. It's not a black swan because we knew we were overdue for a global pandemic, given how interconnected the world had become. But the timing and the impact we did not know, and we couldn't predict it, and we still can't predict that to this day. So I think we all remember last year, sometime early in 2020, where we suddenly couldn't find any toilet paper when we needed to. So for a few weeks, I couldn't find any in any of the shops around. And then they introduced limits, and still nothing much changed, still couldn't find any. And to upset me even more, the spokespeople started to blame hoarders, and they maintained that there was enough for everyone, if only we didn't act so irrationally and buy more than we needed. Now, knowingly or not, they were dead wrong in my opinion, and the same events played out in the rest of the world. Under normal circumstances, demand for low value, high use items such as toilet paper is very, very stable. It's a high volume, low value item, so efficiency is important, and the supply chain has just enough capacity and stock holding. But when the pandemic hit, people started working from home. Large toilet paper rolls are used in business and industry environments, and they have a different type to those used at home. So the demand for the homemade type went through the roof, and the other types dropped. The two types are made on different machines, and we find that they're not easily interchangeable. Suppliers know when there's a spike in customer demand, and that the further away they are from this demand, the higher the orders in the system becomes. And much of this they know are phantom orders. Many have been burned in the past with supply contracts where they will then sit with the excess stock when the demand normalizes. And another issue was that the extra drivers had to be appointed and trained to deliver this material. So as emergency orders started piling up at the manufacturers, they had to break into runs to deliver the most crucial orders, and effective capacity reduced even further. So in this environment, hoarding, I think, is a perfectly rational choice. So as trust and stability in the supply chain decreased, more and more people decided to buy all they could get. Setting purchase limits helped, but nothing stopped determined shoppers to go around the system. So we've come to the realization that risk can have as much impact on our profit as high cost. Tariffs are reappearing in parts of the world, and governments are favoring local manufacturers, especially on the medical and the defense-related products. By making sure that we have manufacturing capability in a region, we can shorten our supply chain response time, we can forecast better, hold central warehouses at the factory, which results in lower stock and better availability. And regionalization allows more control over supply and production strategies, of course. So what did we learn? Well, we can mitigate the impact of human nature on system performance by setting buying quotas, for example. We need to keep protective capacity, so careful always of surprise events, extra capacity. We can see it as insurance. It's not just a cost. We make decisions in the interest of the entire supply chain. So in order to do that, we have to change our incentives, stock holding, and cost responsibilities. We have to have agreements on that. And there's now a renewed pushback against globalization, from changing social expectations, translating to change politics and pressure to regionalize. And having production closer to demand shrinks the resupply time. And as Gold had pointed out 20 years ago, if we can shrink the resupply time dramatically, it has a substantial effect on our cost, and it has efficiency and other competitive advantages. Now, competition has been moving over many years to be away from individual companies competing towards supply chains fighting it out. The performance of the supply chain that one belongs to is becoming crucial for success. And at the same time, the need for maximizing return to shareholders in the short term forbid companies to act in any way other than towards immediate profit maximization. So Zara is a famous clothing supplier that have built its operational, distribution, and marketing functions in a way that most supply chains can only dream of. Almost all the operations and distribution are owned by the company, and for reasons that will soon become clear. We think it represents a great example of what many supply chains could aspire to. Zara has achieved tremendous success by applying many of the breakthrough ideas of Eli Goldratt in his Theory of Constrained Supply Chain writings. They show what's possible when the entire supply chain is aligned for agility and supply and lead times are cut dramatically. So Zara adopts heat fashion designs, manufactures, distributes, and retails the clothes within 2 weeks of the original design appearing. The average for the fashion industry is actually 6 months. So Kazra Ferdows, who is a professor at Georgetown University, says most companies are riddled with penny-wise, pound-foolish decisions to reduce cost. Zara understands that if they don't have to discount as much, they can spend money on other things. And Zara's business strategy allows the company to sell more items at full price because of the sense of scarcity and the exclusiveness that the company exudes. They make 85% of the full price on their clothes, while the industry average is 65%. Unsold items is half of the industry average of 20%. So Zara's success relies on maintaining protective capacity and keeping a significant amount of its production in-house. It makes sure that its factories reserve more than 80% of their capacity for in-season adjustments. In-house production allows the organization the stability and the agility to vary the amount, frequency, and the variety of new products to be launched. Zara ensures it has extra capacity on hand to respond to demand as it develops and it changes. For example, it operates 4.5 days per week at full capacity, leaving the opportunity to add extra shifts when it's needed. Now, we can't all be vertically integrated companies. So what can we do to compete? And we said competition is more and more between different supply chains. Ellie Goldratt articulated this problem already 20 years ago. On the one hand, companies must make money now. On the other hand, they have to ensure that they also make money later, requiring that they act in the interest of the overall chain. These considerations are in conflict. And the solution Goldratt proposed was surprising. Said, no one is sold until the customer has bought. So when the sales occur, the value is apportioned to all the members. By reducing the supply lead time to below the typical contract payment terms, it becomes possible to negate the effects of this new system. And with the development of software functionality in SAP, it's becoming easier to do these kinds of arrangements. So if the supply chains often provide the competitive edge, and we are aware of this, why is it so difficult to make them resilient and agile and get them to behave like the Zara's vertically integrated example? We at Stratflow believe that the fundamental problem is actually one of company culture and belief systems. And in the remainder of this talk, I'm going to look at the role of management paradigms, the effect of the resulting efforts to optimize all the parts of the business, and how this inhibits what technology such as SAP can provide. And finally, we will look at a productivity platform that can alleviate these problems. So let's look at these management paradigms. The following quote is attributed to Albert Einstein. He said, without changing our patterns of thought, we will not be able to solve the problems we created with our current patterns of thought. Now, who would disagree? But if I asked, what is the current pattern of thought that we use in business, what would your answer be? Now, this graph shows the utility to society of new paradigms as they develop over time. Each age builds on the best of what came before until it hits a blue bubble. And in the industrial age, the ideas of companies such as Ford and GM set the stage for tremendous economic and productivity growth. The hierarchical organizations and the processes they developed are very well suited to the need for efficiency and control, without which no organization can survive. They perfected the allocation of work to departments, clear reporting relationships, and accountability, and using planning, budgeting, job specifications, and performance management systems. Consequence of this was that the decision-making responsibility moved from the front line to management. Solved most of the problems the organizations had, but managers still had difficulty in getting crucial information for good decision-making in time. The information age made computing power and interconnectivity cheap and allowed us to hard code our mental models into organizational processes and behavior. And we believe that our organizations are now caught in that second blue bubble, a place where the old methods are delivering diminished results, where they're faced with new societal expectations and legislation. So there are new methods available, but it's challenging to supplant the tried and tested ideas that helped senior managers that rose to the ranks. So the industrial age success was built on managerial genius and holding employees accountable. And with more data, it's possible to introduce more KPIs. And Boston Consulting Group partner Yves Moreau claims that executives are being held responsible for up to 5 times more KPIs today compared to 1950. And he says, in effect, these KPIs at the operational level are set as if the parts of the business operate in isolation and can be measured separately. People put their energy into what can be measured at the expense of cooperation. And as the performance deteriorates, we add more structures, processes, and systems. And that's what's killing productivity and make our people suffer at work. People stop cooperating and the trust disappears. So businesses are run to make money now and into the future. and hopefully while adding value to society. And in order to do this, management needs to manage and balance the three edges on the triangle above. More than 80% of the time we spend on the hard and the soft edges, managing people day to day and making sure the cost is under control. And less than 20% of the time we spend on looking forward, on strategy. So let's look at this strategy quickly. So under the strategy side, executives need to decide things like who will be our customers, who will not be our customers, how will we compete, what technology and skills will we need, who will be our supply chain partners, and how will we structure our agreements. The clients want to have free, perfect, and now, and that's what our competitors also strive to achieve. Marketing and sales need to work together to structure offers that appeal to the market and deliver good margin to the company now and into the future. And the hard edge, well, in order to deliver towards this free, perfect, and now that clients would like, we try to improve continuously to beat our competitors. We structure the operations, we design logistics to be efficient, improve on cost, quality, due date performance, and availability. And to be efficient, we try to maximize the utilization of our resources and get the most of our people through measurement and then holding them accountable. And as we've seen, this can make the human efforts derail if we do too much of that. And then finally, to keep these parts of the triangle in balance and push for continuous improvement, we need our employees to bring their best ideas and energy to work to collaborate in the interest of the customer and the organization. And for this, we need trust and cooperation. In other words, engaged workers. So to make money now and in the future, we need to keep the business triangle balanced. And this is the responsibility of management. But management in most organizations is constrained. In most businesses, the same team that's fighting the fires, trying to manage day-to-day operations, is the team that's responsible for formulating and executing strategy. And in most businesses, they are also the people that work extended hours, have the longest queues of tasks and decisions that everybody else is waiting for. In other words, they are the constraints in the operational and the strategic value streams. So our insight has been that in trying to satisfy customer needs, organizations have an excessive focus on cost reduction. Trying to operate with just enough of everything causes stop-start flow, and it doesn't only decrease the efficiency, the due date performance and quality, but it also overloads the managerial span of attention, and it actually increases the cost. We're going to look at some of this in a few slides. So the dissatisfied clients then overload the sales department with queries, and instead of selling and growing markets, they are sucked into non-value added work. So underneath all that we've discussed so far, there's a much deeper belief. It's one that we all believe intuitively to be true. And that is that we should maximize the performance of every part of our system if we want to be successful. So let's say you're a manager and an employee brings you plans to implement a production chain that looks like this one. The purple resource can do on average 15 tons an hour. The green one can do 16 and so on. So what's your first impression? Is it a good design? I think normally the answer is no. Let me ask the question then, how much will it produce? Well, probably 10 tons an hour, because obviously that red resource is a bottleneck. And there's a lot of wasted capacity if you just look at it, if that chain produces 10. So you send your employee away to come up with a better design. And here's the new design. So now I'm happy. A chain with components that can produce on average 10 each should deliver 10 overall. Even better, all the departments will produce 10 each per hour for 100% efficiency. I'm sure my boss will be very happy when he sees this. But industrial processes are variable. An average of 10 means some 12s and some zeros that gives us 10 on average. And industrial processes are not normally distributed. So we have to deal with the fact that industrial processes in the chain are interdependent. So if B goes down, upstream departments have to stop and downstream departments starve. And if F goes down, it blocks E from producing more, which blocks D, and so on. So if we look at two resources and their combined effect, we see that as green produces less than turquoise, turquoise has to stop. And when turquoise produces less than green's instantaneous capacity, green is starved. and can only produce what turquoise is handing over. So the combined output of these resources is the least of the instantaneous production of both, which is the red line. So let's continue with those two resources, and now we add 4 more in series. All these other resources have non-normal production distributions. So instantaneous output is the lowest output of any resource at any time. You see there, the red is what we produce. And to make it really interesting, sometimes we win the lottery. And you can see there, we exceed our previous production record. But it was not because we were so good, we just won the lottery. And the manager, of course, will say, well, see, you always complain, you don't have enough of this or that. You can do it. And when we look at the entire chain, we see that the output is 5, not 10. Now imagine you're in charge of production, and the next morning you arrive at work, you're confronted with this hourly output. If you're in charge of this chain, you have many problems. Who do you hold responsible for the shortfall in production? Who do you reward for good performance? Moreover, where's the bottleneck that everyone should focus their attention on? And what will the interdepartmental relationships and willingness to collaborate be after a few months of this? What's the likelihood that decision-making will be devolved towards lower levels of the organization? And what will the attitude be towards trying innovative new ideas? And what will employee engagement and willingness to contribute new ideas and try new things be like? This manager won't have time to focus on the future and improvement. It will be managing day-to-day conflicts. And even worse than this, can you imagine what will happen if we digitize the information from all of these departments? We'll have a total overload of data and no useful information. So the best recommendation is typically simplify first, then we digitize. So remember the slide we showed before, the output is 5, not the expected 10. So we have to make a distinction between a bottleneck and a non-bottleneck and manage them differently. We have to manage for system flow and not for departmental efficiency. So by putting in buffers around the bottleneck department, we decouple this bottleneck from the rest of the production chain. The bottleneck now produces substantially more than before and with less variation. The rules for running this bottleneck is different from those of the other departments. Upstream departments use the status of the feeding buffer as a priority system, and downstream it's the status of the space buffer. In this manner, we drastically simplify the management of the production process and we free up time and resources. We create superflow in a spirit of calmness, and we now know where we should focus our digitization and automation efforts, or where we should start for that. Efforts around improving the running of the bottleneck is where we will get leverage results for effort in a very short period of time. Now, we have seen that the red resource is the bottleneck, still going to flow close to 10 units per hour. And the range of the other units will be anywhere from 12 to 16, which means because we need to have protective capacity. So that was that original chain actually that we didn't like. So we have excess capacity in many departments, and they're not at 100% utilization. But because of the extra production, it doesn't matter. The overall production will increase much more than the increase in cost. And this gives us the capability to outperform our competitors on lead time, on due date performance, and on stock holding. So I've tried up to this point to build the case that what's holding us back is the way that companies approach setting up and managing their supply chains, influenced by best practice paradigms. So there's no doubt that the solutions that companies such as SAP bring will deliver tremendous value. But this value will only be delivered to the full if we change the way that we think and if our culture enables the new way of working. So many believe that new technology will be the silver bullet to solve our supply chain, our productivity, and our profitability problems, as well as increase our customer satisfaction. And yet, many initiatives deliver limited return on investment, and more often than we would like to admit, the impact can be negative. So if we look at the implementation of new technology, you can see there that there's a very high failure rate. And why is it so high? The official explanation from tier 1 consultants is that either the managers did not pay sufficient attention, or the cultural resistance in the organization was too high. So we've seen managers are already overloaded. Doing more of what was done before, just doing it better, is not going to do what needs to be done. To address these underlying paradigms, we have to consider a holistic solution that will improve not only the technology selection and the implementation, but one where we also solve customer satisfaction and profitability issues. So as you can imagine, the enterprise resource planning system has given accountants a very strong tool for managing what happens in the operations in the supply chain, and also to control this. And you may think that we are exaggerating, but we've seen many cases where supply chain management is prevented from hiring people, purchasing equipment or materials, purely because it's not in the current budget. In fact, the ERP system often has built-in checks and balances the way it was implemented, which have to be overridden by a senior manager or the accountant before it will allow any deviation. The accountants then, through the ERP system, have in some cases effectively captured large operations. And that is why the supply chain and the profit does not improve. The way these systems are implemented and used can make or break an organization. And I thought I'd just show you this graph from McKinsey's, which shows the worldwide mining productivity normalized to 100 in 2004. It compensates for declining grades in deeper mines. And it shows that from around 2000, that was the time when ERP systems started becoming widespread, there was a dramatic reduction in admin personnel count, but other measurements of productivity went in the other direction. And we believe that it's using the financial reporting results to try and optimize the running of the business. And we have quite a lot of data that points in that direction. So after all of that, we're now ready to propose a solution. And it's not nearly as difficult, I think, as it sounds, although it requires that we adjust our best practice strategy paradigms. And we've been doing this for more than 10 years. So what does a good solution look like? Well, if we want to ensure that technology implementations deliver the best value, we have to address the issues of culture and management failure that we highlighted. Solutions support this by creating an effective change platform from where bottom-up initiatives can launch at low risk. Should deliver stability to free up management and employee attention, which we need to deal in an agile fashion with a changing environment. And to deliver the stability, it should simplify processes and guide employees to the critical areas which require the focus at that time. Traditional processes and the hierarchy is very well suited to the need for efficiency and control. And without that, no organization can survive. This system is very efficient, but is not suitable to handle rapid change. We are in need of another system running in parallel to deliver the agility that's missing. And at Stratflow, we've developed what we call a dual operating system, the productivity platform. It delivers that missing functionality, the agility, without detracting from the benefits of the traditional hierarchy. It fits into the current management system with minimal interference while reducing the overall workload substantially. On the left of the image, you see the classic management structure, and on the right, we have the network structure, which is ideal for dealing with a rapid change. In the flow room, we create this network that we just shown. It's the place where the heads of the departments, middle managers, selected employees get up-to-date visual information on what's happening and happening to the business and the supply chain as a whole. Color codes identify where the attention should be focused and where help from support functions such as HR, IT, or maintenance is required. In this flow room, support functions become aware of the business needs and they become empowered to deliver. It provides a forward view and it highlights the patterns of interaction requiring more attention. And then finally, in summary, just like to say again, the competition looks like it's more and more evolving to be between different supply chains, and we need to align the interest within the supply chains for success. And we believe that the main obstacle is management best practice and the beliefs. Unfortunately, there are methods of intervening that solves that. So thank you very much for your time. I will now hand over to the next speaker.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Hendrik. That was really, really interesting. So the second part of today's webinar is facilitated by Sanjay, Senior Director of Digital Supply Chain Solutions for SAP Asia Pacific and Japan. So Sanjay is responsible for go-to-market strategy, onboarding, enablement, reselling, co-selling of DSCM solutions through partners. And he's also been with SAP for over 15 years. So thank you so much for joining us, Sanjay. It's over to you now.
Thanks, Cassandra. Somehow I'm not able to share my slide due to whatever reason. Some restrictions are there. Would anyone mind to share the slide?
Sanjay, I've just made you co-host, so you should be able to do that now.
Perfect. Good. So hope you're able to see my slide. Not yet?
No, not yet.
Not yet. Yes.
Can you see now? Perfect.
There we go.
Perfect. So hi everyone, I'm Sanjay Makhijani, responsible for digital supply chain channels for Asia Pacific and Japan. I'm based out of Singapore. And thanks Hendrik for the excellent presentation on the importance of supply chain and planning and solutions and technology. I'll just take it from that point where you started from why supply chain. So supply chain in today's time cannot be just looked at in isolation. Maybe I have a challenge in procurement, I have a challenge in planning. It has to be taken in a holistic way, because planning or a supply chain in today's world is network. You are connected to your customers, you are connected to your suppliers, you are connected to your vendors, you are connected to your shippers, your carriers. So it has to be looked in a holistic way. So as far as SAP is concerned, I'm not sure people have seen this. We call it as a hamburger approach in terms of our strategy. On the pink, you see, yes, we are known for an intelligent suite and an ERP, okay, but SAP just beyond the ERP, okay. Yeah, we have 27 industries which are integrated as a part of our ERP. We have line of business solutions, including supply chain, integrated as a part of ERP. But over and above, you see on the right hand side, we closely work with partners who come with a strong expertise, who have built their key IPs and solutions suited for that particular industry. It might be a dairy industry, it might be a pharma or a rail industry. So we closely work with partners who have built their IP on supply chain and beyond, who can host their solution on cloud, and the customer can consume the intelligent suite along with the industry cloud solutions. And if you see below, sustainability is integrated as a part of SAP's approach to the market. In supply chain, we cannot overlook sustainability. Okay? And then at the same time, every customer is different. Every customer's processes are different. So how we leverage the technology platform, which has got analytics, which is called database, artificial intelligence, and those technology to create that differentiator for themselves. Okay? And I started on the top. We are in a network world. We need to look supply chain as a holistic, whether it's sales, procurement, marketing, manufacturing, logistics, that approach. And that's what SAP is taking the approach to move to the cloud environment and going beyond that in the network environment. So if I go to the next slide, and talking about supply chain, okay, what we call it as digital supply chain, it is beyond just planning and logistics. So we are in a connected world. People are connected. We are seeing even the machines, especially with IoT and today's environment of 5G communication, when the machines are communicated. So what we take our approach to the market is called design to operate or design to consume. If you're in a process industry, taking data from any CAD system, SolidWorks, Solid Edge, CATIA, NX, converting that engineering BOM to manufacturing bill of material, doing the planning inside our ERP/S4 system, from where you procure, how much you procure, when the material should arrive, raw material planning, distribution planning. Then once you have done the planning, then you manufacture, leverage the technology, what is there in ERP, and have the complete visibility at the same time from shop floor to top floor. Our Industry 4.0 approach starts with the intelligent suite and extends beyond that intelligent suite part of it. How you see in real time how your machines are performing, how much I'm manufacturing, where, how much is the production issue, what are the quality issues which are coming up. So have that information in real time. what we call it as shop floor to top floor integration. Then once you manufacture your products, how do you pick, pack, ship, deliver to the customer? And once those products, let's say if a machines or a generator or a pump is delivered to a customer, how the machines are operating at real time, because when you're manufacturing certain things, it's ultimately an asset. That asset needs to have an uptime. That's what the entire productivity is measured on. So that's the entire approach. And when you see the network, when we call it inside the premises, that's okay. You do collaboration with your different line of business, but as mentioned, you need to collaborate beyond your internal four walls, and you need to communicate with the vendors and suppliers, seeing real time when the products will arrive, how will arrive, where are the bottlenecks which are coming. Hendrik covered an important use case of where toilet rolls, sort of issues are coming up. But just consider a case of, let's say, vaccine collaboration. Okay, vaccine, how much you order, in what quantity it is coming. It will come in millions in the country. When it's distributed, it will be distributed into 100,000. And when it's going to the vaccination center, it will be in hundreds. So how do you manage this entire sort of supply chain? When, how much quantity is needed, who has used it, and when any customer needs to take an appointment, how do you book it? You cannot have a situation where 1,000 vaccines have been delivered and only 500 come up. 500 will go waste. So you need to have real-time sort of planning and the statistical forecasting approach in the traditional words. How much I needed any raw material item in last March and in this March, that will not work. So you need to do a what-if analysis. What if this happens? What if my raw material doesn't come at this point of time? What if my demand changes? So you need to take that sort of approach, and supply chain in just planning cannot work in isolation. You have to look closely in terms of procurement, in terms of manufacturing. This is what I wanted to highlight, and the other part is on why SAP. Okay, so SAP has been in ERP business for around 40 years. Okay, so SAP's approach to market is not just go with a point solution, but an integrated approach, as we call it, as designed to operate. In other scenarios are hire to retire, or procure to pay, or lead to cash. That's the approach which we are taking. And we are right now leading supply chain vendor, not only just for planning or logistics. It also includes on the asset side. How do we manage and maintain assets? How do you procure? So we look into a holistic view, and every single analyst, whether Gartner, IDC, Forrester, are rating us on top when it comes to supply chain. I talked about the second point. Rather than looking into a point of product-based approach, look into a holistic approach from a process point of view. That's what the customer needs. Then focusing on cloud first. Today the world is changing so fast. You cannot have your innovation coming in a yearly cycle. It has to be in a quarterly cycle. If it has to be in a quarterly cycle, you have to be on cloud. So that's the cloud first approach which SAP has taken for not only just the supply chain planning part of it, but the traditional manufacturing, which was considered as only an on-premise environment. The whole innovation is happening on cloud. At the same time, not just a strong product, you need strong partners. Okay, so having a strong ecosystem, we have thousands of SAP system integrators who work on supply chain portfolio across the globe. Some are expertise; they are just doing an expert as a implementation on certain solutions. Some are holistic look from an end-to-end point of view, depending on their business priorities. Also, innovation is our key sort of priority. We work closely with the startups, because that's where we'll see the entire innovation or ideas will come up, how we quickly onboard them and help them integrate in our ecosystem and take that innovation to the next level. How do we help them in terms of expert advice, in terms of infrastructure, in terms of end-to-end processes? That's where we are known for. And at the same time, taking feedback from customers. Now, every single customer is connected. They can give their feedback, how their products are performing, what are the challenges they are facing. So we closely work with customer, take that feedback as a part of our design process, and then develop our products accordingly. So this is what my sort of 2 cents in terms of why SAP in a supply chain environment.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Sanjay.
Thanks, everyone, and I'm happy to take questions in the chat, and I'll hand over to Doyon.
Thank you, Sanjay. Any other questions for either Hendrik, Jiwang, or Sanjay? Anyone coming through? No, that's okay. I think there's a few others. Belinda, was there any that I've missed on the chat?
Yep, so I've got one from Claudia. She's got a question for Hendrik. She's asking, as a culture transformation expert, I would love to hear how the systems have changed the culture within organizations. In my experience, it takes more than one system.
Thank you. Yeah, that is a very good question. And the answer is everybody involved that work together in this productivity platform flow room environment, the culture of that group becoming successful is very, very easy. It takes care of itself. The issue is that you can't just leave that as an island in a sea of different ways of practicing, because eventually the central part of the organization will overwhelm this part. So it's crucial that you don't just focus on this particular group, and that you communicate to the wider organization why they are suddenly so successful. And our experience, and maybe it is just because we're practitioners, is that it's enforcing people to work in ways that don't deliver results. That's where the culture goes for a spiral downwards. So just by fixing that and allowing people to perform, and allowing managers to be the kind of managers that they always wanted to be, but can't because the system doesn't allow them, that solves most of the problem. But yes, you have to go wider, and that's a crucial part.
Excellent. Thanks, Hendrik. Thank you. Any others, Belinda?
So we've got one more from Ty. Question for Sanjay. For small regional producers, are there any good SME ERP systems that can integrate with a distributor's enterprise SAP ERP platform?
Yep, I think I answered that question on the chat as well. Yes, we have solutions like Business by Design, which you can start implementing in days. These are solutions which are on cloud. This is mainly centered across SME customers. Customers can also now leverage S/4HANA Cloud, again, where the implementation can be in weeks time frame, depending upon the complexity, depending upon your business requirement. So gone are the days where the SME customers were not exploring a good ERP system and looking for a point solution approach. We have got now a good solutions on cloud which can take care of the SME approach.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Sanjay. That was very, very helpful. Can I just ask, just before we actually go on, so thank you, all of our speakers. We've got Hendrik, Sanjay and Juong, very informative. Can I just ask everybody, if you can, we NextTech are holding a number of webinars, and I always take everyone's feedback on board. I'd love if you can just put in the chat 1 to 10, 10 being fantastic, you got loads out of today, 1 being we need to look into a little bit more on the information provided. But I'd love to get everybody's thoughts, if you can, in the chat. I'd love to hear and see what you got out of today, and definitely interested to see your scores there. So that would be greatly appreciated. So NextTech, as I mentioned, hold regular webinars with our partners and other key stakeholders. This is our first with SAP. Juong, we're very happy and excited to have SAP as a partner. And if today's conversation sparked interest, or you'd like to get some more information on other webinars coming up, please send your details through to info@nexttech.edu.au. We'll be posting on social. Please share your key insights and takeouts from today's session. And we're really, really happy to have you all join us. So thank you so much for your time. Again, presenters, thank you so much for sharing all of your relevant information. And we look forward to speaking with you all.